Nintendo has some skeletons in their closet. What happened? Mario is the family-friendly face of Nintendo, but even a company like Nintendo has some skeletons in their closet. What happens when the gaming company for people of all ages doesn't always appeal to all ages? Whether they're shady with their games or their business practices, Nintendo has not always been rated E for everyone. Today, we'll be looking at the things Nintendo may not be so proud of. Before we begin, don't forget to hit subscribe and catch up with The Gamer for all your video game content. Now, without further ado, here are 8 dark secrets about Nintendo you knew nothing about. Streaming. Streaming has changed the video game industry. Back in the day, you had to read a slew of reviews from a variety of game publications that were either biased as all heck or just plain wrong. Today's video game journalism is no different, but what has changed is how the gamer can be both informed and entertained, all with a face attached to the content. Streaming platforms like Twitch and now YouTube host a variety of personalities who showcase games for millions of fans. There is a little known gray area with streaming in video games. On paper, video game companies and devs can take down a streamer's stream for potential copyright infringement, since they are streaming a game largely for free to a wide audience, thus devaluing the product. Like we said, on paper, devs and companies can do this, but in practice, they let it happen because the marketing streamers provide is just too valuable. Can you think of all the games that have become smash hits because of streams? PUBG would like a word on this subject. However, one company just doesn't get the memo, and it's Nintendo. Streamers and Let's Players, big and small, have called out Nintendo in the past for demonetizing their streams and uploads. Prominent YouTubers like Video Game Donkey and Boogie2988 have touched on this topic, and with the release of Super Mario Odyssey, it doesn't look like Nintendo will be loosening its grip on streamers and Let's Players, monotonizing their content for quite a while. So just remember, the next time you watch a Nintendo stream, there is a good chance the streamer or Let's Player is playing this game at a net loss due to Nintendo's ironclad stance on copyright. Come on, Nintendo, join the fun. A flood of garbage. Calvin Tucker's Redneck Jamboree, Pets Resort, Neighborhood Games, and Story Hour Fairy Tales. What do all these titles have in common? Well, nothing at first until you realize they are all third-party games on the Wii. The Wii revolutionized gaming in many ways, but one of the ways it took a big step back was in its absolute flood of trashy, unappealing games. If you walk into a video game store today, which no one does anymore, just go to the Wii section and look at how many third-party games the Wii had during its run. It's shocking. So the same system that brought us Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess and Super Mario Galaxy also brought us carnival games for Wii. This all seems very strange because way back in the 1980s, when the NES was dominating the market, Nintendo had a very tight grip on quality control for their games. Sure, there may have been some bombs that slipped through the cracks, but all in all, Nintendo had their eye on quality, and as a result, the NES remains one of the most memorable consoles in the history of gaming. It really gives you some context at how drastically things have changed. Nintendo, a standalone titan on the gaming world, now has its spot for the top contested with every generation of consoles. The Wii may have brought some new ideas to the table, but if the table is filled with copies of Story Hour Fairy Tales, I think the progress is just lost in the sea of mediocrity. Chew on that one, Nintendo. Scarcity. Anyone who's even looked at an economic book knows supply and demand. When supplies are low, demand is high, so on and so forth. But we're talking about video games, not stocks and bonds. Right? Yeah, we're a video game channel. Yeah, okay. The thing is, Nintendo has come out with some fantastic products in the past. Some even give Nintendo fans anxiety attacks today. It all comes to a head with amiibos. You remember those, right? Well, they're still used today. But we bet some of you forgot just how scarce these little fellas were. On launch, there was a mad dash for some of the amiibo figures, and by the time the stragglers got to the mall, all that remained were Luigi's, Link's, and Mario's. No Peaches, Zelda's, or even Kirby's. This intensified when games would come out with an exclusive amiibo, which would be sold out within hours. No matter what Nintendo did to resupply, it was never enough. It got to a point where fans accusing Nintendo of creating artificial scarcity to drive up demand. While the amiibo situation eventually solved itself, kind of, the other products Nintendo had in store were not so lucky. Pining for the glory days of 16-bit graphics, Nintendo released the SNES Classic, a smaller and sleeker model of the original console. These babies sold like hotcakes, actually hotter than hotcakes, because like some of the exclusive amiibos, retailers sold out of them in a heartbeat. Even pre-orders for these were out in mere hours. Yet when the day finally arrived, Walmart had to cancel every single pre-order because of a technical glitch in their system. Needless to say, people were pissed and got the same outrage over artificial scarcity all over again. Get your pitchforks and torches. We're going mobbing. Perhaps the solution to this problem is twofold. Perhaps Nintendo could make enough product for an initial launch, or maybe fans can better temper their expectations. We should know better by now. Online play. Online gaming is a modern innovation we often take for granted. While PC gamers have been enjoying online play for the better part of 3 decades, console gaming is still a relatively new concept, dating back to the early 2000s. Back then, we had no idea what online gaming could really do aside from connect players across the globe. Back then, the internet still required a landline and would be disconnected with a phone call. Mom, get off the phone! But today, we have gamers who have all of their content streamed to them over the internet. In the short time it's been around for consoles, Nintendo has found a way to do it the worst. The worst. The first console Nintendo released with online play was technically the GameCube, but even then it worked for maybe 2 games and required a separate adapter you had to buy. Shocking. Meanwhile, the Xbox blew everyone out of the water with Xbox Live. What could have made online gaming worse for Nintendo? 2 words for you gamers. Friend codes. Nintendo's online system requires you to enter a friend code if you want to add someone online. Yes, we said that in the present tense because even on the Switch, you still need a friend code. Think about that for a moment. To add someone online, you need a 12-digit friend code, a code which is easily forgettable and manually enter it in. So simply making a profile and adding someone is too easy for Nintendo, so they need to make this needlessly convoluted, like making friends in real life. Despite the horrible user interface with online play, Nintendo is finally in the online gaming circuit, but its competitors have a good 10-year head start in perfecting it and innovating online gaming. Underpowered. If we were to look at Nintendo and pick out its best qualities, you would pick its amazing IPs and franchises. If you look at the company's timeline, you'll see flagship franchises like Mario, The Legend of Zelda, and Pokémon still going strong to this day. Some might even say that, like a fine wine, they're getting better with age. However, there is one department Nintendo falls short in almost every time: power. If you were to examine the specs for the last few major Nintendo consoles and compare them to their peers, Nintendo comes up short every time. Like every time. Let's first look at the GameCube. During its run, it had to compete with the Xbox and PS2. The GameCube's CPU was no match for the Xbox, and the same goes for the audio input. Despite this, the GameCube was still a contender and could go toe-to-toe with the PS2 and Xbox. Where the divide seems to become more apparent is in the gen afterwards with the Wii. The processor for the Wii was just barely better than the GameCube's and ran at 480p at best when the other consoles were already pushing HD. Not to mention the graphics for the Wii could not hold a candle to the PS3. Meanwhile, the original Xbox 360 was too busy red-ringing to compete. Oh, and not again! Which brings us to today's generation of consoles, the Switch, Xbox One, and PS4. The Switch as it stands is woefully underpowered compared to the other systems. As far as games go, Nintendo can't be beat right now. But as a console, the Switch can't even compare to the competition in regard to power. As a tablet, it's actually pretty powerful, but not as a console. Birdo's Unmentionables. For being a family-friendly company from a large conservative country, Nintendo can be weirdly progressive with a few things. Though he or she might not be wildly known now, Birdo was a character who made her first appearance in Super Mario Bros. 2 as a boss. This Yoshi-esque creature has been described as trans, or at the very least gender fluid, given the fact she is actually a he, but refers to himself as a she. Hey, it's 2018, you'll fit right in, Birdo. In any case, Birdo has been a minor character in the Super Mario canon, appearing in sports titles, spin-offs, and other games. Often, she's paired with Yoshi because they appear to be similar species. However, she's been in a few Japanese exclusive Wii games. One of these is the obscure and often overlooked Captain Rainbow. In this very odd game, Birdo is wrongly imprisoned for using the women's bathroom, which is a play on the whole gender fluid thing. To get Birdo out of jail, the player has to go to her house for something to prove she is a female. When you go to her house, you find this proof under a vibrating pillow. The game never says exactly what it is, but we can kind of fill in the blanks. We need evidence someone is female, and the proof is right under a vibrating pillow. Wow, Nintendo. Feel like I need to clear my internet history now. Keep in mind, Nintendo has also made a game where you can marry other people's Miis on the opposite sex only. So it seems Nintendo can't make up its mind about whether or not to fully support the LGBT characters, and is left at a vague, kind of. The Virtual Boy. This might not necessarily be a secret, but it's certainly something Nintendo is trying to forget, and more of a rough patch in the company's history fans and gamers love to remember. Hey, remember that? It's hard to believe virtual reality is here in the modern gaming world. Okay, admittedly, it's still a little buggy and in its infancy, but it's the virtual reality we always wanted ever since the concept was first proposed way back in the 80s. You see, early Nintendo was buzz with peripherals and product marketing. People often think of the Super Scope as an item in Super Smash Bros., but it was really a gaming peripheral used for shooting games. Long story short, it was a better item in the Super Smash Bros. Than in real-life peripheral. Some of the more popular ones include Rob the Robot, a toy that came with one game and served as a player too. Yeah, Rob is a more memorable Super Smash Bros. Character than a peripheral too. Isn't it weird how so many past Nintendo products made it into Super Smash Bros.? Really makes you think. Well, one product eludes the shameless Super Smash Bros. Plugin is the Virtual Boy. Ahead of its time in concept, not so much in execution. You see, while this little toy gave us the first glimpse into 3D, it came with some caveats. First, you could only really play this for about 30 to 45 minutes before players started getting headaches and eye strain. The games were displayed in this blood red and black, which is not the best thing to be staring at for hours on end. Perhaps what is most appalling about the Virtual Boy was its library of games. It barely had 10 games for its entire run, and none of them were particularly noteworthy. If Nintendo ever steps into VR, using the Virtual Boy name and correcting everything wrong with the previous rendition would be amazing. If not, they could just put it on the next Super Smash Bros. The Nintendo PlayStation. You never thought you would see those words together, or if you did, you think it'd be an elderly person who doesn't know what consoles are, like the X-Station and the PlayCube. But we assure you, at one time, the Nintendo PlayStation was a real console. Back when Sony was just getting into video games, Nintendo and Sony came to an agreement to try to make a console together. This unheard of partnership led to the Nintendo PlayStation. Note that PlayStation is two separate words here. It's important. Now, this PlayStation was going to use a CD drive instead of a cartridge system Nintendo had been using up until this point, but they felt it was time to make the switch. However, the two companies began to butt heads over who would get the rights to the games on the system. Nintendo would do something so underhanded it would forever change the landscape of gaming as we know it. Because of this disagreement, Nintendo went around to Sony's main competitor, Philips, to develop a Super Disc system. So at the press conference where Sony was going to announce their partnership with Nintendo in making the PlayStation, Nintendo instead announced they would be making what would become the Philips CDI. Gasp! Sony was pissed, obviously, beyond pissed really. As a result of this backstabbing, Sony naturally pulled out of the deal and went on to make the PlayStation. Now one word, and the rest is history. And those were 8 secrets about Nintendo you knew nothing about. So what'd you think? Do you have a little dark fact about Nintendo you'd like to share? If so, leave a comment down below. Don't forget to subscribe to The Gamer and catch up on all the latest gaming list content. Thanks for watching.